Hey, check this out. So you see these little popovers that I place next to the settings in this app that I'm building right now? Well, these little things are total game changers, and that's not even an exaggeration. So in this video, I want to walk through how I actually design and build these little popovers and make them reusable across multiple apps. I'll show you the one that I'm working on right now and even an app that's even more mature and how these popovers have evolved. But then I also want to get into why these little popover tooltips are actual game changers for my product business. I've seen it firsthand, and they're even more. They even make more of an impact than you might think. Let's get into it. All right, so all they are really are just an icon and a popover box with some content, and I usually place them right next to settings or little things that I need to explain right there inside the interface. Right now, I'm looking at an app that I just started building, so it's coming together, and I started placing these popovers throughout it. Here's a look at another app of mine called Clarityflow. This has been around for a few years, and these popovers are everywhere in the interface there as well. All right, so this app is in Ruby on Rails, but the concepts that I'll share here can really apply no matter what your tech stack is. Here is one of those actual popovers. So I'm looking at the form that powers this form here. And I placed it in a Rails partial, and I placed it inside a folder called shared. I placed it in a block with a do here so that I can really control the content that's inside it, because sometimes the content goes long and I need to separate it into multiple paragraphs, and that's easy to do right in this format. All right, so that's how I place it on the page. Let's look at the partial itself. All right, so I've got a container and then the box itself, and then we're yielding the content right in the middle of it. And then we've got an icon. I'm a big fan of Font Awesome. They make a huge library of icons and questions, something like that. They've got a really great search too. So, I love to grab these. They're super easy to use. You can just grab the code right there and pop it right into your app. And then they've got all sorts of additional classes that you can use. I actually combine it with Tailwind classes as needed. So that's the popover element itself. And you'll notice that I'm using data controller, data action. And yep, I'm using stimulus.js for that. So let's look at the very simple stimulus controller for this. We've got a mouse over action where we are removing the hidden class, and a mouse out action where we're adding the hidden class. So let's take a look at that. My mouse is over. We removed the hidden class on the popover box, and then my mouse is out, and simple as that, the box goes away. So this is a super simple version of the implementation. This is a new app that I'm currently working on. Let's take a look at how I've actually extended this popover component in a much more mature app in Clarityflow. So as I said, here in Clarityflow, I use these popovers everywhere. Here's one. If we look at some of these settings, here's another one. Oh, actually, it's getting kind of close to the edge there. I need to fix that. Some of these options have little popovers as well, and then sometimes they're used in this context. So here's a look at these popovers in Clarityflow, and this is that same partial that builds out these popovers. But as you can see, there's actually a lot more going on here. So it's really very similar to this popover, but what I did was I added a bunch of configurable options on it. So you'll see a lot of these local assigns here, popover classes, popover box padding, width, position, z-index, additional classes. I even have this thing, popover data attributes, so that I can attach additional custom data attributes. The reason why I've added all of these configurable local assigns, which have some defaults if I don't set them, is that I think I have something like 100 different popovers spread out throughout all of the interfaces in Clarityflow. And so if I look at some of them, here's one where I'm calling the popover, and instead of the default classes, I needed to move it to the left a little bit, and I put margin left 0. Or I needed to make the popover box position left aligned instead of right aligned, right? Or in this case, the popover icon, the little question mark, I wanted to use a smaller version of that than what I default to. So I can add these optional local assigns to my popover component, which is used throughout the app. And again, I can just pop in whatever content I need in that particular spot. Here's one that's even a little bit more complex, where I'm customizing some of these attributes even more, position, width, padding. In this case, I'm even using a different icon altogether. So I have a setting for, swapping out a different font awesome icon. And then in some cases, depending on the functionality of where I'm using it, in addition to the actual popover stimulus actions for like mouse out and mouse over and mouse out, sometimes, we've got something else going on with JavaScript. So we need to add additional data attributes to the element. So I've got this piece there, and we're sort of parsing that out and mapping it to what ends up being, additional data attributes that get output here. So that's a look under the hood. All right, now let's step back and think about why these are actually so important, why I think that popovers are actually game changers for your product business. And believe me, this is not an exaggeration. These little popovers have made such a big impact in multiple software products that I have built and as businesses. So number one, these popovers give customers confidence. They're giving the customer instructions where and when they actually need those instructions. So they're not, these little tips, these little pieces of instructions are not buried somewhere in the knowledge base documentation, right? So if someone's using this interface and they need to use this contest link tag for, whatever this is for, right on like the very first time that they use it, if they just need a tip for like, wait, where does this fit into my workflow? They could just hover their mouse over, and I'm giving them a little bit of a tip there, rather than maybe taking a wild guess as to what this might be, and then they might misuse it, and then they might get frustrated, and then they might need to go hunt for the docs. It's right here when and where they need it. What that does psychologically for your customers is actually a big deal. It makes them feel more confident. I don't know about you, but I find that when I am using a new product for the first time, I don't want to hunt the docs. I don't want to have to read the manual. I want to just get in there and use it, right? And so by putting these little tooltips right there where and when they need it, it eliminates the need for the customer to even feel like they need to click this question mark and find the help that they need. Because when they do that, that's a roadblock. That's slowing them down. That's making them feel like, why don't I just understand this intuitively? Whereas this, it gives them confidence, like, oh, I get it. I'm going to use it. Easy, right? It also then eliminates the need for them to contact customer support. People send questions to customer support, but I always believe that for every one question that's sent to customer support, there's probably 10 more customers who had the same question or the same frustration, and they just didn't want to go through the exercise of sending an email to customer support and then waiting for a response. So, by helping customers where and when they need it right directly in the interface, it eliminates the need for them to feel like they need to actually contact customer support. And ultimately what this does, as they're using it and they're using it successfully and they're seeing how these pieces fit together because we're giving them these instructions right there in the interface, it actually turns them into power users. And those are the best kinds of users for your app. The power users really understand the ins and outs of every setting that you're putting in there. And these things go a long way to taking a brand new user to a casual user into becoming a power user. Super, super important. So how does that actually impact your bottom line as a business when you're running a software product like this? Well, believe it or not, these popovers and interface-based documentation is an actual business growth lever, right? Successful users who feel more confident and they're using it more successfully, meaning they're using the product well, they're using it the way that it's designed to be used, they understand the implications of every setting and every button. That leads to a customer converting from being just a trial customer into an actual paying customer. And leads to customers being successful and sticking with your product instead of getting frustrated and looking for alternatives. So that leads to retention, lower churn, right? All of that leads to customers who are happy, they're successful. That turns your customers into raving fans. Word of mouth growth. It's the best marketing channel you could possibly have. That's why I truly believe that designing a product well and making the product intuitive and making it easy for customers to pick up and use, that is actually the best marketing channel for a software product. And all that, of course, leads to business growth. So that is how I'm actually connecting the dots between these little popovers here and actually growing your business. There's, more obvious benefits, of course, less but better customer support, right? So I really see this firsthand in my SaaS businesses. There is far less what's known as tier 1 customer support. These are like your how-to questions, right? What does this button do? What does this setting do? How does this fit to that? I get very, very few customer support inquiries that are just asking how to use basic things. And what that means, it's actually less time for me to answer those questions repeatedly, of course. But as the business grows, that's less of a need to hire lower level customer support reps. In fact, I just made my first hire for a customer success person who's actually a little bit more senior, more advanced. And I was able to even skip over the need to hire tier 1, entry level customer support reps, because our customers just help themselves with thanks to these popovers, right? Now, we do actually still get customer support inquiries, but they are more valuable These are like high quality customer support inquiries. What I'm talking about are feature requests, bug reports. So when my customers do write into support, they already know the basics of how the functionalities work because they've got these popovers, right? But typically they're on their way to becoming a power user, and so now they're asking for more. They're asking for feature requests. That directly goes into my product roadmap and helps us make the product better for customers. And of course, they're power users, so they're probably running into all these little edge case bugs that we didn't even uncover during our development process. So that's huge. The last benefit here is that placing docs directly in the interface through these popovers, it actually makes keeping the documentation up to date. And that's a huge, huge challenge. If you've ever maintained a SaaS product over a year or more, 2, 3, 4 years, inevitably your knowledge-based documentation, your support docs, get out of date as you're launching new features, you're evolving your features. But when you're leaning heavily on these popovers, these little tooltips, these instructions are embedded right in your interface. That means that they are right in your code base. So when you're in there designing and adapting your code base, you're also updating the words on the page that users see when they're using these features, which means things are staying up to date. I really find that the popover content throughout my app is so much easier to keep up to date because it's right there where we're actually updating the product. Whereas if we make major changes to a feature, then I sort of have to remember to go back and find all the different docs in our separate knowledge-based site that reference this feature and then make updates to those. And that gets out of date very easily. It also sort of really reduces the need to have lengthy written documentation in that knowledge base. Of course, we still have a knowledge base with the in-depth articles to go into use cases and things like that. But it is less work. We don't have to cover every single detail because the granular details are right there when and where the customer needs it. And that means fewer actual docs to maintain. So I've been taking this approach where big features really only need one single doc in the knowledge base along with a bunch of little popovers. And that means fewer docs to actually maintain and keep up to date. So as you can see, there's what's seemingly a small interface enhancement, these little tooltip popovers, if you will, actually make a huge impact on the business and the product and the customer experience as a whole. So I hope you found that helpful. And I would love any feedback or questions about this one and any other little details that you would love to see me cover here on the channel. And yeah, thanks for watching.